Alrighty. Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now. So let me just get rid of this ad thing right here. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there.
Alrighty.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now. Okay. Okay, guys. Well, can you give me feedback here? The audio is okay. Thing right here. Yeah, there you go. The video is okay, and then we. Can please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there.
Alrighty.
Okay. Good day.
Okay, guys.
Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now. Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, can you give me feedback here? The audio is okay. Right here. Yeah, there you go. The audio is okay. Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there.
Alrighty.
Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys.
Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now. Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, can you give me feedback here? The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay. Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there.
Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, can you give me feedback here? The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there.
Alrighty. Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there. Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there. Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there. Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there. Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay. Here, there you go. The audio is okay.
Please let me know if the audio is okay and if the video is okay. All right, and we'll start there. Alrighty.
Is that better? Yeah, what I want to do is something that I've been thinking about. Good day.
Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything's working okay, and I should be live right now.
Sure everything's okay. Okay, guys. Well, feedback here. The audio is okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Let me hang on. Okay, so it's good now. Great. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, not sure what's going on there, guys, but very happy it's sorted. Okay, okay. All right, so yeah, like I said, this is a stream that I wanted to do a long time about color because I think color is kind of like a language, if you will, right? So yeah, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to teach you guys a new language today, and that is going to involve some technical stuff, some scientific stuff. Hopefully you'll stick around for that. And I'm going to talk about color depth, how that affects your work if you're working on a monitor for industrial clients, how it affects the entertainment business, and so forth and so on. Yeah. And again, thank you guys so much for hanging on while the audio is sorted. Okay. So yeah, here we go. Okay, so what I want to do first before we dive in is to thank BENQ. Now, I've been an ambassador for BENQ for, I would say, the last 3 years or so. And to be honest, I've been using BENQ products way before, before I became their ambassador. So that happened way later, and I think they're solid. They allow me to do this, so without them I couldn't do this at all. So if you want to check them out, that'd be great. Okay. Alrighty, guys. Yeah, some of you might know my channel, some of you may not. That's all good. Quick introduction. My name is Mike Hermes. I'm a freelance 3D artist. I typically do prop work, not too much character stuff, mainly prop work, but I also work as a consultant where I help individual 3D artists to improve their game. And I worked for companies in the 3D industry. So whether it's industrial clients or entertainment clients, where they want to get up to new software and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then, I also speak at events. Some of you may know that. And just to let you guys know, there's a new one coming up. Check out ice.art. That's ICE.art. And yeah, I'm going to be speaking there as well. And it's a cool new conference for 3D environment artists. Okay. If you have any questions related to this webinar, you can drop me an email. My email is on the screen right there. And that said, let's move on. Okay. All right, so hopefully you guys are sitting relaxed and you got a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you are drinking because we're going to be talking about a lot of things, yeah? My plan is to spend, I would say, about half an hour to 40 minutes on this stuff, and I definitely want to be able to do a solid Q&A, right? I preferably would want to interact with you guys real life, but unfortunately that's not possible. So hey, welcome to my living room. I'm just keeping one eye on the chat here. I know that there's a lag, but we'll make it work. Okay. Cool. All right. So understanding color. Like I said, color is like a language. Most 3D artists, or digital artists for that matter, focus a lot on technical aspects of the job. So in the case of a 3D artist, they're looking at, how to understand Maya or 3ds Max, what the buttons do, and how to rig, how to animate, and so forth. Yeah. But these are technical, what I like to call hard skills. That said, Eddie just made coffee. That said, other things are more important, I would even say. Yeah, you need the basis of the technical skill, but for you to improve as a 3D artist, you need to get in sync with the actual purpose of the job. And that purpose is to help your client or whatever you're working on to tell a story, okay? Now, tell a story means talking language. Like I said, color is like a language. Once you understand how that works, it will help you to make your story so much stronger, okay? Alrighty. So, you all heard of the phrase, and then there was light, right? And let me just switch the screen quickly here. Just hang on. Yeah. So, yeah, then there was light. The thing about light is this. People have this assumption that without light, you can't see color, right? Well, it's even more than that, because without light, there is no color. Now, hang on, guys. I'm still having some difficulties here, but I'll get it sorted. Alrighty, yeah? And that's kind of weird to understand, because it's kind of like, whenever you open up the fridge, you see the light, yeah? And as soon as you close that fridge, there's this running joke where people say, hey, how do you know if the light's still on when the fridge is closed? Well, the same thing applies to color. If there's no light, you don't see any color. But does that mean that the color is not there anymore? Is it gone, or can you just not see it? Well, oddly enough, you'll be surprised about the answer. Because light is, in fact, color. Without light, it's not only a situation where you don't see the color, it's a situation where the color doesn't exist anymore. Now, we all know the rainbow, so we know that, color is visible when there's light, yeah? But how does that work? Well, if you look at light, whether it's sunlight or light from a lamp or anything like that, right? Light contains waves, and waves in different wavelengths, okay? And a wave has an amplitude. If you look at the top line here, the red line has a wide amplitude, and the violet one has, one that is more frequent or has a higher frequency, yeah? Now, all of this is contained in a light source, but the thing is, these different wavelengths will create a visual perception of color in your brain. And what we decided to do is give each wavelength a name. And this wavelength is called red, that one's called orange, that one's called yellow, and so forth, okay? So to get back to what I just said, light creates color, light is color, but color exists in your brain only. Now that needs some explanation, but we'll get there. So if you look at an object, right, you see that that object has a certain color. How does that work? Well, I don't know if you're familiar with ray tracing as a 3D artist, right? But ray tracing kind of calculates the light source from the eye back to the object, back to the light source. This is kind of the other way around. The sunlight, for example, has a whole bunch of wavelengths of light, yeah? These different wavelengths, they hit a certain object. Let's say this, what is this thing called, a paprika or whatever, yeah? So all these different wavelengths hit that object, and every object in the world has kind of like a chemical compound to absorb certain wavelengths, right? So everything that's absorbed by the object is a color or a wavelength that you're not seeing. The one that is not absorbed bounces off that object, it reflects, it hits your eye, and it sends a signal to your brain, right? So the red paprika is red because it absorbs every other wavelength except the wavelength that's causing red. Hope that makes sense. Now, like I said, I would really like to do this interactive with you guys, so I can kind of, jump into your questions, but it's not possible, so we'll do that at the end, okay? Okay, so you probably heard at some point about visible spectrum, right? Because not all light is visible. For example, infrared light is not visible. Microwaves, you can't see those waves. Radio waves, same here. Now, in this diagram, you see an overview of the visible spectrum of light that you actually can see, with your human brain. And keep in mind, I'm saying human brain because different species, like animals, see different things. And then, of course, you have humans that are colorblind for whatever reason, yeah? Okay, but any light that we see is in this spectrum right here, okay? Alrighty, so how does that work exactly? Well, there you go, bell pepper, thank you. So how does this work? So the light of the sun has all these different wavelengths, as I've showed you, right? Each wavelength has a different amplitude. The low frequency is red within the visible spectrum, the higher one is violet, and so forth. This light comes into your eye, and in the back of your eye you have cones, and you got groups of cones. And each cone will be adapted to receive a certain light frequency, right? So one cone will identify red because it's in tune with that frequency, the other one another color, and so forth, yeah? And these together interpret that signal as being a color. And the signal of these cones go to your brain and say, hey, I'm seeing red, I'm seeing this color, I'm seeing that color. So like it says in this slide, it's basically an illusion. Color only exists inside your brain. How cool is that, right? To give you an example, if you look at a raccoon has a simple version of cones in his brain, right? So a raccoon sees gray tones. He doesn't see color at all. So if he's not seeing color and you are, does the color exist or not? Well, it does, but only inside your brain. Now, this tells us that what we're talking about here is it's influencing your perception. And that is our job as an artist, right? We try to influence people that are looking at our work, whether it's entertainment, whether it's a movie or a game or an art piece, right? And this is part of that because you use color to influence their perception, yeah? Okay. So now that we know that, what about color theory? And I'm sure you guys heard of color theory at some point, and maybe you had it in school and whatnot, yeah? So color theory is basically a developed method to help artists to use colors combined with each other to have more pleasing results, if you will, yeah? So things like, I don't know, matching colors or contrasting colors and so forth. And we'll get into that. Kind of curious what the lag is exactly right now, but I can't tell, so you guys let me know. All right, anyway, so in order to understand that, so we have a color wheel, and I'm absolutely sure that you saw this at some point, yeah? Now, the color wheel, we have more than one. We have a traditional color wheel, which is this guy right here, and then you have other types, like you have the RGB color wheel and the CMY color wheel and so forth. But in order for you to understand this, I would say by far the most important one is this one, yeah? Now, you heard about primary colors, you heard about secondary colors. I'm gonna put it in context for you, okay? Now, the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow in this example. Okay, so these are straight up primary colors. Now, what happens if you mix two primary colors? And you probably know this. If you mix red and blue, you get purple, right? So if you mix two primary colors, you will end up with a secondary color. And you can see in the diagram right here that the one in the middle that's mentioned as secondary, purple, is right in between red and blue. Yeah. So mix two primary colors will give you a secondary color. If you mix a primary color with a secondary color, you will get a tertiary color. So for example, mix purple and red, you will get red purple. Mix blue and purple, you get blue purple. Makes sense, right? What you probably don't know is that the human brain is capable of seeing millions of color shades. Kind of cool, right? Okay. So yeah, I don't know if you guys ever thought about this, talked about this, looked at this, but there it is. Yeah. Alrighty. So if we know that, then how does that help us in our art? Well, whenever you make a piece, a rendered 3D piece, or you're working on an animated character and you want it to have a certain clothing style, or you want to use certain colors in the background and that kind of thing, what you would do is you would combine colors. Now, what are colors that make sense to combine, right? Now, these are called color harmonies. And you can have a bunch of choices. If you want to go with analog, you get kind of shades from yellow towards orange, right? All the colors are very close together. But you can also choose to work complementary. So you would use opposite colors. And here are a couple of examples of color harmonies. Now, in addition to the colors that you choose, primary, analog, and so forth, you also have the option to play with the hue, with the tint, and with the shade. Yeah, and then you got the saturation as well. All of these elements will help you. Now, to give you a couple of examples, let's say you are working as a 3D artist on a kids show for TV, right? Chances are that the hue is quite bright, that you're using primary colors, right? And primary colors only, because it's appealing to little kids to use primary colors and to keep things very simple, okay? If you are working on something in fashion, for example, you might want to choose an analog combination, and so forth and so on. Now, the thing with color harmony and color theory is that this is so incredibly complicated that there are tons and tons of books written about this, right? So I encourage you to dive in and spend some time on this to see how this works for you. Like I said, super complicated, but it's important to know. And you might think, well, yeah, nice to know, but I'm never going to use it. Well, for example, why does the Hulk wear purple? Yeah, look at the color harmony right here. Yeah, what we're looking at right here is a complementary color setup. So they chose the purple of the pants to match the green of the body because they chose this complementary color scheme. Okay, just an example to let you know that it's in fact something that is important to understand and to check. Yeah. Wow, thank you. Just looking at the comments here. I'm trying to keep one eye on the comments and, do my thing here. Okay, cool. All right, so hopefully this makes sense to you guys. Now, because we're 3D artists or 2D artists or digital artists or whatever you want to call it, yeah? Because one of our main tools as an artist is our computer and our monitor, it's important for us to understand color depth, right? Why? Well, because clients will expect you to understand color depth, right? And not just clients, but freelance clients you're working for, studios you're working for, and so forth and so on. So let me explain to you exactly how this works. And I'm not talking about bits and bytes as in memory, so not megabyte, gigabyte, that kind of stuff. I'm talking about color depth in bit, yeah? So 8-bit monitor, 10-bit monitor, and so forth, okay? Cool. Now, let's imagine the light bulb. The light bulb is either on or off. If it's off, everything's black. If it's on, everything's bright, yeah? So this one light bulb has two options. It's either black or white. That is called 1 bit. So if you had a monitor that could display 1 bit color, you would have black and white. Hard up black and white, yeah? So what if you have 2 light bulbs, right? So that would be 2 times 2 options. They can be both on, both off, one on, one off, the other one on, the other one off. 4 options, yeah? So that's 2-bit. So you can imagine that if you go on a grayscale monitor to 8-bit, you're looking at 2 times 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 2. So 8 times, right? That is 256 shades of gray. And now you're thinking about that book, yeah? I know. Okay, so 250 shades of gray. The thing is this, though, we don't work in black and white. We work in color. And when you work on a monitor, you typically work on a monitor based on RGB, red, green, and blue, meaning that you have 256 shades of red, 256 shades of green, and 256 shades of blue. That's a mouthful. Okay, so this is the typical color setup for a monitor, and with red, green, and blue, you can basically create any type of color. Yeah. And I'm getting a question about HDR here. I'll try to fit that in. Yeah. So red, green, and blue. Now, if we apply this theory on to a color monitor, then instead of having 256 shades of gray, we have 256 shades of red, 256 of green, 256 of blue, which will give you 16,777,216 possible colors. Okay, cool. However, if you have a 10-bit monitor, it's not 2 times 2 times 2. You know, in the 8-fold, it's in the 10-fold. So suddenly you're going from 16 million to 1 billion possible colors. Yeah. Now, I personally work with 10-bit monitors. I have 3 of them, and you know, well, 4, but 3 main ones. And it's not surprising that they're all BENQ monitors. But like I said, I used BENQ monitors way before they started to sponsor me. Yeah, so I didn't do that just because of that. Solid products, and that work well for me. Now, all my monitors are 10-bit. The reason why I do that is because of color accuracy. I want color to be spot on, and I want it to be spot on for a couple of reasons. So let's look into that. Enough about the science here, yeah? So, why is color important to begin with? Well, you can have any color you want in your artwork, and you can say, hey, you know, it's fine. But it's not, because color affects people. I just gave you an example of using primary colors in a kid's show, right? But what about, you know, food that's blue? What about a stop sign that's green, right? Certain colors have certain meanings to us. It helps us to find our way in traffic. It helps us to decide whether food is healthy to eat or not. It triggers our emotion. It makes us happy in a movie. It makes us sad. It makes us aggressive. It makes us disgusted. So what I'm saying here is color has a huge effect on the human perception and the human emotion, right? And because we are 3D artists and because we are telling a story, it's important for us to understand the power of that color, okay? So, let's see. Okay, so let me just quickly jump into the HDR image thing, yeah? Because I'm seeing some comments here on that. And for some of you may not know this, but I'm also a professional photographer, and I'm also a BENQ ambassador as a professional photographer. Making HDRI, and I'm saying HDRI images, right, is a thing that photographers do and 3D artists use. Let me explain that to those who don't know what that is. HDR stands for high dynamic range, and HDRI stands for high dynamic range image. Okay, a 3D artist will use an HDRI image to create a fake world around his or her 3D model and use that file to kind of mimic the light of the real world, right? So how does that work? Well, if you take a camera and you take a photograph of something, you have a certain exposure of light coming in, right? Now, when you take a photograph, either the dark areas can be, too dark, so you lose all detail, or the white areas are too bright, so you blow out all the detail. So you might have a photo of a forest where you can see the trees, but the sun is just one big white spot, right? Because the photograph or the camera cannot deal with that difference between the darkest dark and the brightest bright, okay? So what a photographer does is they take the same photograph over and over, but they change the exposure. So they turn it very dark and then make a photo of the sun. They turn it very light and make a photo of the dark forest. Then they put them all on top of each other in, for example, Photoshop, and they combine it. So you have all the detail of the light, all the detail of the dark, and together it's now a high dynamic range image. Instead of a 4 megabyte JPEG image, you're looking at a 400 megabyte image, right? It contains a lot of information, and that information is used by 3D artists because they want to use the light that is captured in that photo so they can mimic a real world scenario. Again, we have a lag, but please let me know if that explanation makes sense, okay? And then we'll continue with that right here. Okay, so like I was saying, color is important. You probably wouldn't eat a blue strawberry, right, or anything like that, yeah? Okay, now let's look at commercial applications for a second. Let's say you are working with, I don't know, one of these big brands here, yeah? They hired you as a digital artist and they want you to make a design using their logo for a product, whether it's Starbucks or McDonald's or Coca-Cola, yeah? Now, you're working on an 8-bit monitor and it's not calibrated. So you come up with the design and you send it over to Coca-Cola and you think that the logo you created is spot on, right? But the problem is, on your monitor, it looks great, but they look at it on their monitor, it looks horrible. And their conclusion is basically that as a 3D artist, you're not reliable. They can't work with you because you're not getting it right, okay? That's why it is super important to understand color depth, to have the proper color depth on your monitor, and to make sure that you calibrate your monitor as well. So you know that white is white, black is black, green is green, and so forth, yeah? Now this is in commercial applications. Now, why is it so important for a company that you get that color right? If you have a bottle of Coca-Cola, that red on that logo is always the same, and it's science to them. It has to be the same any country, any production run, any store, anywhere, everywhere, because it needs to be recognizable. You instantly recognize the red of Coca-Cola. If that looks a bit pinkish, you think something is wrong. It's been on the shelf too long, or it's fake, or whatever, right? So for them, that branding makes them recognizable, yeah? Same thing with McDonald's, obviously, and same thing with Starbucks, yeah? Okay. Now this is for commercial applications. Let's say you're working for industrial clients. But what about entertainment? What if you are working in the movie industry? What if you're working in the game industry, yeah? How does that apply then? Well, first of all, you can have some of what I mentioned before, because if you are working on, let's say, a sequel of a movie, you want the color of a certain object, if it's 3D, in a certain scene, to be exactly the same as your previous shot, right? Excuse me. Super important. But more importantly is if you have creative freedom to use color to tell a story, you need to understand what color does what in relation to what type of emotion will that create, okay? So we're going to use color, okay? And we're going to use color to do all sorts of things. Now, I assume you at some point heard about color grading. Color grading is basically done on every output. I use color grading on every render I make, always. And we talked about this HDR before. I encourage you, once you have done your final render, your final piece, if it's a still render, or once you've rendered out your sequence, if it's an animated sequence, right, is to color grade it. Color grading is done by using what they call LUTs, L-U-T, and that stands for lookup table, right? Now, using a lookup table, and there are several available in Photoshop, you can actually make your own. Looking at the use of lookup tables, it will allow you to do something like what you're seeing right here in this scene. On the left-hand side, this may be some kind of industrial environment, you know, maybe Mad Max type deal, something like that, yeah? On the right, after applying the color grade, it suddenly looks like a scene from The Matrix, okay? Purely because of that color grading. And it also has this sci-fi feel to it. It has this, you know, not on this world feel to it. And that is, they do that on purpose. It's deliberately, okay? Now, so one way of using that color is to give you a sense of location. Now, the other way is to look at it from kind of age range. These are 3 scenes from the movie Up from Pixar, right? And you see Ellie and Carl right here as kids in the top scene, and you can see that the colors are fairly saturated, right? So saturated colors, and they're quite bright, and as they get older and you move down, you see that the color is less saturated. They do that, and they also soften it down a bit. So on the top, the colors are a bit hard, on the bottom, they're a bit softer. What they're saying is, as you get older, you lose color, right? You fade, if you will. You become softer as a person and so forth. That's kind of the thought process behind that, right? And you don't give it a lot of thought when you're looking at the movie, but it makes perfect sense. Now, I hope so anyway. Okay, so here are a couple of examples, and there are many types that are very famous. For example, the orange and teal color grading template, if you will. Orange and teal is used all the time. But in general terms, if you're looking at anything sci-fi, it's usually very blue, it's very green, it's kind of cold colors, if you will. And it's to kind of take away the human element. Humans typically have a pinkish skin, or depending on their skin color, at least a warm type of skin, yeah? Aliens do not, for obvious reasons, so that's what they're gonna do. Yeah. Jim, the fixture is slowly fading away. Spider-Man, very dynamic. Of course, you got the color setup of his suit, and then you have the image backdrop. In this case, the backdrop is done for a different reason. First, you're in a big city, you have a lot of smog. Second, it's kind of to emphasize the character in the foreground. That's where you want the viewer to look. So you can, again, use color and color tones to drive the audience eyes onto something. And third case scenario, where you have the scene with Carl and Ellie again in Pixar's Up. They're kind of in a mid-range age. They're having a picnic in the park. It's a sunny day. The grass is green. They're having fun. It's all good, yeah? So very different setup. Now, here are a couple of more examples. Looking at any war movie, right? If you look at something like, you know, a war movie, you will see very desaturated colors. It's going to be green. It's going to be, you know, that kind of thing. The Matrix, again, very green, with the purpose of showing that it's not real life, it's not real humans, okay? All right, so That said, what about colored light? Okay. In photography, there's a thing called the golden hour and the blue hour. The golden hour is at sunrise, and the blue hour is at sunset. Yeah, and this is preferred by photographers because it has such a cool effect. Now, you can do that to create a very warm feeling for a scene like that, or exactly the opposite if you want it to be really cold. Yeah. Now, what happens if you apply colored light to something that already has a color, right? What if you project blue light on a, I don't know, on a yellow object? You're going to see green, okay? Now again, you didn't change the color of the object. You didn't change the color of the light. It's your brain interpreting these two colors, mixing them up in your head and having the perception that it's green, okay? Now, before we move on, based on this webinar, please leave me with some questions. What type of content you want to see in the follow-up videos based on this, right? So I can kind of have a better understanding of what you guys like, yeah? Okay, so talking about this temperature. Some of you may know this, some may not. If you look at Autodesk Maya, and it's been there forever, you have the opportunity to create lights and then add a Kelvin value to it. Now, what's a Kelvin value? You probably heard of Celsius, you heard of Fahrenheit, depending on where you live, right? To indicate what the temperature is outside, yeah? When it comes to light, they use the Kelvin scale. And 5,000 Kelvin is about, I would say, midday, right? So 5,000 to 5,500, as you can see right here. So if you got a scene where it's the middle of the day and somebody's walking outside, you would set up your lighting for that scene at something like 5,500 Kelvin, yeah? With this scale in mind, you can basically mimic any type of scenario you want. You want something to be, you know, early sunrise or late in the evening and so on, yeah? Cool. Okay, besides using light, you can also have a lack of light to drive the focus of the viewer. So I don't know if you've seen this Toy Story scene. This is a quite emotional scene where she's talking about her previous owner and that kind of thing. They just focus the light mainly on her face because they want you to see that emotion, yeah? In the Pixar Incredible setup here, you see kind of an evil look. The eyes are made dark, same deal. You want it to be looking mysterious, yeah? And then in the bottom one in Finding Nemo, you want the focus to be on the eggs, yeah? Okay. All right, so in conclusion, pretty much, if we're looking at color, what color can do is create a feeling of, it's funny, it's disgusting, recognizable, romantic, powerful, anyway, a lot of emotion, right? Emotion is what we do. We use color, we use light, we use shapes, we use movement to help tell a story, whatever that story may be, and to trigger an emotion. And that emotion can be whatever you want it to be or whatever your client wants it to be, okay? Okay, so yeah, in conclusion, a very important tool in your artist toolbox. Yeah, that leaves us with our Q&A. So I'll let you guys catch up for a second. Okay, so yeah, I'm seeing a question here by a Savage student. Can I suggest some books or tutorials about lighting? I only know right now about 3D point lighting. I personally did quite a few videos on lighting, but I would be happy to do more specific ones if there was a need, okay? Keep in mind that light is so much more powerful than just a, excuse me, a 3-point light setup. 3-point light setup is great if you want to, light up a product or something like that. But if you want to use light to dress a scene, to drive viewer focus, it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah? Okay. All right. Yeah. So any other questions, guys? What else? Yeah, I know it's a lot of theory, but like I said in the beginning, a color is kind of like a language, and in order for you to understand the language, you need to understand the structure. You know, how it works, why it works that way, and so forth. And whether you like it or not, we have a technical profession. Yeah, so it's good to be able to have that conversation with your client or your art director or whoever that may be. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Color and Light by James Crooney. Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, like I said before, there's going to be an upcoming event, and that's going to be found on ICE. And let me just type that in here for you. That's going to be a brand new conference, and it's yeah, it's very artist-centric, and it's all about environments, right? And I'm doing 10 things at the same time here, so sorry if I'm a bit distracted. Let's see, I said in the beginning that I was a freelance artist. Why did you decide this career path instead of going for a full-time employment? What are the pros and cons? Okay, so Petar, I did a 10-part series on anything you ever wanted to know about being a freelance artist, and in that video series I also explain the pros and cons and why I personally decided to go freelance. But you can find it on my channel. It's a separate playlist. Like I said, 10 videos, so there you go. Yep. Let's see, any tips on interior lighting and coloring? I did a video on that, and the thing about interior lighting is to, and I'll give you a 10-second summary of that. It's go into any existing real-time room, take a piece of paper, and write down what light sources are there and where they're coming from. If you see light coming through the window from the top left, write that down. If there's a little light sitting there, write that down, and so forth and so on. Try to mimic that in your scene, and that will help you big time. Let's see, regarding monitor calibration, maybe you should show how that is done and that there's software to help even. Yes, absolutely. It's a good idea, Eddie. I think that's great. I personally, I mean, you have built-in calibration options within the BENQ monitors, but I, in addition, use an external device to help me. And yeah, I can definitely do a video on that. No problem. Let's see. Can I please explain briefly about value in a landscape? The light is in the sky, then ground, but I forgot the rest. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, one more time on that HDR thing. I think that's what you're talking about. If you, for example, look at the webcam right now, yeah, you see that there's a bright spot behind me. That's the window, and the sun is hitting that window, okay? If you make a photo of this, then you will see that in the middle of that window, there's going to be a white spot where you don't see any detail at all, right? It's completely blown out. Now, in order for me to make a photo of this without that being blown out, I need to turn down the exposure of the camera a lot. So the photo would be very dark. The only bright area would be the window. And then I would make another one slightly lighter and another one slightly lighter. And then I could get the details of the really dark areas, like for example, next to me in that corner there, yeah? Then I would stack these all together, and then I would have one file with tons and tons of detail, okay? All right, well, let's see, that's pretty much it, guys. Unless you have any pressing questions, I think that's it. Let's see, do I do post-processing? And if yes, can you explain that a bit? Oh yes, I do a lot of post-processing. Absolutely. One option is to render out individual passes of your render. And Brittany says, I'm late. Well, yeah, you are. We're just wrapping up. Sorry about that. So yeah, I would render out individual passes and then compile them. For example, in Photoshop, I do post-processing in After Effects, and I use all different types of methods to do that. Especially color grading is something I do a lot, and even post-processing renders in programs like Lightroom, Photoshop, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We'll do one more question, guys, and then we'll call it a day. So, any more questions? Anything? Okay, that's a tutorial question. Okay, I'll consider that. Any specific question about the topic of the webinar, guys? Is this video going to be saved? Yes, this video will stay online and it will be visible for you to watch again at your own convenience. Okay? All right, guys. Well, okay, so questions are coming in about things that are not necessarily on this topic right here. So I'm going to call it a day, guys. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your, I'm pretty sure, busy day to hang out with me. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of thing or whether you prefer the live streams that I do usually, where there's more like a quicker interaction. That said, before you go, let me know whether you enjoyed it or not. Is this something you want to see more or not? Was it helpful? Let me know, okay? And there's that lag again. Okay. Well, I'm going to call it a day. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, BENQ, for supporting this webinar. And I'll see you guys either in one of my tutorials or I will see you on a live stream. Okay. Thank you guys so much and bye.